Today, I've got three true sleepover stories for you, the kind of nights that started normal and ended with something none of these people can fully explain. So relax, get comfortable, and listen. If you enjoy the story, hit that subscribe button before we get started. Alright, let's get into it. I met my best friend Priya in the sixth grade, and by the time we hit high school, we were basically inseparable. Her family had moved around a lot when she was younger because of her dad's job. So by the time they settled into their house on Birchwood Lane, it was the first place she'd ever lived in for more than 2 years. She loved that house. I loved it too. Mostly because her parents let us stay up as late as we wanted during sleepovers, unlike mine. The one odd thing about Priya's house was the hallway upstairs. It had 5 doors along it: her room, her parents' room, a bathroom, a linen closet, and one door at the very end that was always kept locked. Priya told me it used to be her older brother's room before he moved out for college, and her parents just used it for storage now. Fair enough. Every house has a junk room. The first time something felt off was during a sleepover in ninth grade. We were lying in her bed around midnight, half asleep, when Priya sat straight up and said, "Did you hear that?" I hadn't heard anything. She said it sounded like someone counting, low and quiet, coming from the hallway. I told her she was dreaming and to go back to sleep, and honestly, I believed that. People say weird things half asleep all the time. A few months later, we had another sleepover, and this time I heard it too. A soft voice from the hallway counting slowly. 1, 2, 3. Then silence. I convinced myself it was Priya's dad doing something mundane, maybe counting boxes while he looked for something in the storage room. I didn't think about it again until morning when I mentioned it at breakfast, and her dad looked at her mom in a way that made the kitchen go quiet for a few seconds too long. The third time it happened, we decided to actually get up and check. It was nearly 2 a.m., and the counting was louder than before, closer to the locked door at the end of the hall. This time, it didn't stop at 3. It kept going. 4, 5, 6, getting faster, almost frantic, like something was rushing to finish before we got there. When we reached the door, the counting stopped instantly, like it knew we were standing right outside. Priya grabbed the handle without thinking, and it was unlocked, which had never happened before. Inside wasn't a storage room at all. It was a small bedroom, fully furnished with a child's bed, drawings taped to the walls, and a nightlight still plugged into the wall, glowing faintly, even though the room was supposedly untouched for years. On the wall above the bed, scratched faintly into the paint in 5 uneven lines, was a tally, as if someone or something had been counting days. We didn't go in any further. Priya slammed the door shut, and we ran straight to her parents' room. Her mom looked exhausted, like she'd been expecting this conversation for a long time. She finally told us that before they bought the house, a young boy had lived in that room and had gone missing under circumstances the family never fully explained to Priya. His body was never found, and the case had gone cold for over a decade. The room had been left exactly as it was because the previous owners refused to touch it. And apparently, Priya's parents had made the same choice out of some mix of respect and unease. Priya's family moved out about a year later, officially because of her dad's job again, though I've always wondered if that was the real reason. I never went back to that house, and to this day, whenever I'm in an unfamiliar hallway at night, I still find myself quietly listening for counting. When I was around 11, my cousin Marcus used to spend a week at our house every summer while his parents worked out some custody arrangement. He was 2 years older, which made him endlessly cool in my eyes. And my parents let us camp out in the living room with sleeping bags and a flashlight, pretending we were on some kind of expedition. The summer I was talking about started completely normal. We watched movies until my parents made us turn the TV off, then stayed up even later telling each other stories. The kind that are only scary because you're a kid whispering in the dark. Around 1 a.m., Marcus finally fell asleep mid-sentence, the way kids do, and I lay there for a while just staring at the ceiling before drifting off myself. I woke up sometime later to the sound of the back door, the one that led out to our yard, being tried, not slammed or forced, just tried, like someone checking if it was locked. Our house had motion lights outside, and I remember specifically that none of them had come on. I told myself it was just the wind pushing against the frame, something old houses do all the time, and went back to sleep because I was too scared to actually get up and check. The second time, a few nights later, during his stay, it wasn't the door. It was tapping on the window right behind the couch where Marcus was sleeping. 3 light taps, a pause, then 3 more. I nudged him awake, and he heard it too, which somehow made it worse because part of me had been hoping I was imagining it. We both agreed it was probably a tree branch, even though there wasn't a single tree close enough to reach that window. Kids convince themselves of a lot of things when the alternative is too scary to sit with. The next night, we decided we'd stay awake on purpose to catch whatever it was. Mostly because Marcus insisted it would be so cool if it turned out to be something real. Around the same time, the tapping started again, except this time it moved. Window, then the back door, then the side door by the garage, circling the house methodically, like something checking every possible way in. We sat frozen on the couch, flashlight off, not daring to move. Then it stopped at the back door and didn't move again. We heard the handle jiggle once, hard, like someone testing whether the extra force would work this time. Marcus grabbed my arm and pointed toward the small window in the back door. Through the curtain gap, we could see a pale shape pressed close to the glass, unmoving, just standing there in the dark, like it was listening for us to make a sound. I don't remember deciding to scream, I just did, and my dad came thundering down the stairs with a bat he kept by his bed. By the time he got the porch light on and the door open, there was nobody there. No footprints in the dew on the grass. Nothing knocked over. Nothing at all except the faint, lingering smell of something like wet earth by the doorframe. We told my parents everything the next morning. My dad admitted, almost reluctantly, that a man had been arrested 2 streets over a year earlier for breaking into homes at night, specifically to watch children sleep before running off when confronted. He said they hadn't wanted to scare me by mentioning it. Marcus never stayed over that late in the summer again after that year. His visits got shorter, then eventually stopped altogether when he got older. I still don't know if what we saw that night was that same man. In middle school, my friend Devin invited me to sleep over at his place for the first time, mostly because his older brother, Caleb, had just moved back home after dropping out of college, and Devin wanted someone else around in case things got weird. I didn't think much of that comment at the time. I just wanted to play video games and eat too much junk food, like every other sleepover. Caleb was strange in a way I couldn't quite name back then. Not mean, not scary exactly, just off. He kept mostly to himself in his room down the hall, which had a lock on the outside of the door instead of the inside, something Devin's parents had installed for privacy, according to them, though neither of us questioned it out loud. We spent most of the night in Devin's room, and everything felt completely normal until close to midnight, when we heard Caleb's door creak open down the hall. We heard him walk slowly past Devin's room and go downstairs. A few minutes later came a low humming sound, almost like an old television warming up, followed by faint, garbled voices that didn't sound like they belonged to any show either of us recognized. I told Devin it was probably just Caleb watching something on low volume, and he seemed to accept that explanation, the better of both of us. While Caleb was out of the house, Devin suggested we sneak into his room just to see what all the humming was about. I want to say I hesitated, but honestly, I was just as curious as he was. We found an old TV with a VCR hooked up in the corner, and beneath the bed, a shoebox filled with unlabeled tapes, except for one that had "Do Not Watch" written across it in thick black marker. Naturally, that's the one we put in. The screen flickered to static before settling into grainy footage of a dimly lit basement, empty except for a single chair bolted to the floor. Nothing happened for almost a full minute, just silence and the faint hum of old tape. Then, faintly in the background, we heard breathing, slow, deliberate, way too close to the camera to belong to whoever was filming from a distance. We ejected the tape the second we heard footsteps on the stairs, shoving it back into the box just as Caleb's bedroom door swung open behind us. He didn't yell. He just stood there for a long moment, staring at us with an expression I still can't fully describe, somewhere between disappointment and something closer to fear. He told us very calmly to never touch that box again, then walked out without another word. Devon and I didn't talk about it that night, but the next morning I overheard his parents arguing quietly in the kitchen about sending Caleb somewhere, which I hadn't been meant to hear. A few weeks later, Caleb was gone. No explanation given to me. just that he'd moved to stay with a relative out of state for a while. Devin and I stayed friends for a couple more years after that, but we never spoke about the tape again, not even once.